The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest room in the galaxy. It floated in space above a planet called Nexus Prime, and inside it, representatives from 300 species sat in rising circles around a central platform. The ceiling was made of clear glass, and through it, the stars burned like distant fires. Ambassador Park Do-yun stood at the edge of the human section, waiting for his turn to speak. He was a small man with gray hair and a calm face. He wore a simple, dark suit, nothing fancy. Around him, aliens of every shape and size talked loudly, their voices mixing into a constant noise that filled the hall like water fills a cup. The Galactic Council was meeting to discuss a problem. The Kravari Empire had been attacking neutral space. In the last 3 cycles, they had conquered 12 star systems. They burned cities. They killed millions. They took whatever they wanted and left nothing behind. Now they were moving toward a human colony world called New Busan. Park Do-yun had read the reports. New Busan had 4 million people, families, children, farmers, and teachers and doctors. They had done nothing wrong. They simply lived on a planet that the Kravari wanted. The council speaker, a tall creature with silver skin, called for order. We will now hear from the human delegation regarding the Kravari advance. Park Do-yun walked slowly to the central platform. His footsteps were quiet. He stood in the middle, surrounded by hundreds of alien faces looking down at him. "Thank you," he said. His voice was soft but clear. "I will be brief." He looked up at the Kravari section. Their ambassador was there, a massive figure covered in black armor with 4 arms and a face like a skull. The Kravari were known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They had never lost a war. They were proud, brutal, and afraid of nothing. The Kravari Empire has 7 days to withdraw from the neutral zone, Park Do-yun said. If they do not, humanity will respond. For a moment there was silence. Then the laughter started. It began with the Kravari ambassador, a deep rumbling sound that shook the air. Then other species joined in. The Torani, the Vexer, even the usually quiet Silurians were smiling. The laughter filled the hall, bouncing off the walls. Councillor Vreth, the senior representative of the Torani collective, stood up. He was a reptilian creature with green scales and yellow eyes. "Respond?" he said, still laughing. "Humans? Respond to the Kravari?" More laughter. Vreth looked down at Park Do-yun with something like pity. "Ambassador, your species has been part of this council for less than 200 years. You have never fought a war. You have no fleet capable of standing against the Kravari. You are merchants, traders, scientists." He shook his head. "You are not warriors." Park Do-yun did not react. His face stayed calm. He simply waited for the laughter to stop. The Kravari ambassador rose from his seat. He was 3 meters tall, and when he spoke, his voice was like thunder. "Human," he said, "I will give you some advice. Take your people from New Busan and run. Run far away. Because when we arrive, we will not leave anything alive." The hall was quiet now. The Kravari ambassador's words hung in the air like a promise of death. Park Do-yun looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. "You have made your choice?" He turned and walked off the platform. He did not look back. He did not argue or threaten or beg. He simply left. The council watched him go. Some were confused. Some were amused. Councillor Vreth shook his head and muttered something about weak species. In the back of the hall, an old Silurian historian named Torek watched the human ambassador leave. Unlike the others, Torek was not laughing. He was very old, almost 900 years, and he had seen many things. He remembered a story from the archives, a very old story that most species had forgotten. Long ago there was a species called the Mordrith. They were powerful and cruel, much like the Kravari. They had made war on humans once. In the early days when humanity first came to the stars, the Mordrith no longer existed, not defeated, not conquered, not scattered to other worlds. They were simply gone. Every planet, every station, every ship, every record, every child, every memory, gone completely, as if they had never existed at all. Torik had searched the archives for years, trying to find out what happened to them. He found almost nothing. Just a few lines in old documents. The humans went to war. The Mordrath disappeared. That was all. Torik watched Ambassador Park Do-yun disappear through the doors, and he felt something cold in his chest. He wanted to stand up and tell the council to stop laughing. He wanted to warn them. But he knew they would not listen. They were too proud, too sure that they understood how the galaxy worked. They did not understand humans at all. Outside the Grand Assembly Hall, Park Do-yun boarded his shuttle. It was a small ship, plain white, with no weapons visible. He sat in the pilot's seat and let out a long breath. A screen in front of him flickered to life. Admiral Yunharan appeared. She was on the bridge of the HSS Resolve, the command ship of the human fleet. Haran was a woman in her 50s with short black hair and eyes like dark stones. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. They refused, she said. It was not a question. They refused, Do-yun confirmed. The Kravari will not withdraw. The council laughed at us. Haran nodded slowly. Her face showed no anger, no surprise, just acceptance. Then we follow doctrine. Yes, Do-yun said quietly. We follow doctrine. Haran leaned forward slightly. I want you to understand something, Ambassador. Once this begins, it cannot be stopped. There will be no negotiations, no treaties, no surrender. We will not stop until it is finished. Park Do-yun closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about New Bizen, 4 million people, families, children. He thought about the Kravari ambassador's promise to leave nothing alive. I understand, he said. Begin the operation. Haran nodded once. The screen went dark. Across the galaxy, in 17 different locations, human vessels began to move. They were not heading toward New Bizen to defend it. They were heading in the opposite direction, toward Kravari space, toward the Kravari homeworld. On the bridge of the Resolve, Admiral Yunharan looked at her officers. They were quiet, serious. They knew what was coming. Send the signal, Haran said. All units. Operation Silent Dawn is active. The message went out at faster-than-light speed, reaching every human ship, every agent, every sleeper cell that had been planted in Kravari space. Over the last 30 years, the Kravari had 7 days. They had chosen to laugh. They had chosen to threaten. They had chosen war. They just did not understand what that meant. Not yet, but they would. The Kravari fleet arrived at New Bizen on the 5th day. 40 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and surrounded the small blue planet. They were massive vessels, covered in black armor and heavy weapons. Any one of them could destroy a city in minutes. Fleet Commander Torak stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the planet below. He expected to see human defense platforms. He expected to see evacuation ships trying to escape. He expected panic and fear and desperate last stands. He saw nothing. Scan the planet, he ordered. His officers worked quickly. Their instruments swept across New Bizen, searching for life signs, energy readings, anything at all. Commander, one officer said slowly, the planet is empty. Torik turned sharply. Empty? Yes, Commander. No life signs. No energy signatures. No ships. Nothing. Torik stared at the screen. The planet floated there, quiet and peaceful. Cities stood silent. Roads were clear. Ports were abandoned. 4 million humans had lived on this world. Now they were gone. Every person, every animal, every machine, gone. How is this possible? Torik demanded. Where did they go? No one could answer. Torak felt something strange in his chest. It was not fear. Kravari did not feel fear, but it was something close. A kind of unease that he could not name. He pushed it away. Claim the planet, he ordered. Report to the warlord that New Bizen has fallen. The message went out to Kravari Prime. The homeworld celebrated. Another world conquered. Another victory. The humans had run away like cowards, but Torak could not stop thinking about those empty cities. He had conquered many worlds, and he had seen populations flee before. but they always left something behind: bodies, broken equipment. Signs of panic. New Bisen was clean, perfect, as if the humans had known exactly when to leave and how much time they had. As if they had planned it. Far across the galaxy, Director Choi Yoon-ji watched the Kravari claim New Bisen from her office on a hidden station. She was the head of human intelligence, and she had been preparing for this moment for 30 years. She was a small woman with gray hair pulled back tight. Her office was dark, filled with screens showing feeds from across Kravari space, agents, cameras, intercepted communications. She saw everything. New Bisen evacuation is complete, her assistant reported. All 4 million civilians are safe in temporary housing. Yoon-ji nodded. The evacuation had taken 3 days. Every human, every pet, every piece of valuable data. They had moved an entire planet's population without the Kravari noticing, because the Kravari were not watching. That was their mistake. They were so focused on conquest that they never thought to ask how their enemies might think, how they might prepare, how they might fight. Yoon-ji opened a secure channel. Commander Kang Min-ho appeared on her screen. He was the leader of Human Special Operations, a tall man with a scarred face and calm eyes. He was currently on Kravari Prime, hiding in plain sight as a merchant. Trader, one of thousands of human agents who had spent decades building covers in Kravari space. Director, he said quietly, the Kravari have taken New Bisen, Yoon-ji said. They think they've won. Min-ho nodded slowly. They always think they've won. That is why they always lose. You are authorized to begin Phase 1, understood. The channel closed on Kravari Prime. Min-ho put away his communicator and walked out into the crowded streets of the capital city. Millions of Kravari moved around him, warriors, workers, families. They did not notice him. He was just another alien trader, one of many who came to sell goods to the great empire. They did not know that there were 2,000 humans on this planet alone, hidden in every sector of society. Some had been here for decades. They had families, jobs, lives. They spoke perfect Kravari. They understood the culture better than many. Kravari did, and they were all waiting for the signal. Min-ho sent a simple message to his network. 3 words, begin Phase 1. The operation started small. So small that no one noticed. A communication satellite developed a minor glitch. Nothing serious, just a tiny delay in some messages. A supply ship received wrong coordinates and delivered food to the wrong military base. A power grid in a major city flickered for half a second. Little things. Tiny mistakes, but they added up. Over the next 3 days, these small errors multiplied. Military commanders received reports that were slightly wrong. Fuel shipments arrived late. Training schedules got confused. Money disappeared from accounts. Not much, just small amounts that could be explained as computer errors. The Kravari noticed some of these problems. They blamed lazy workers, bad equipment, simple mistakes. They never thought to connect them. On the 6th day, Warlord Gracchus received his daily briefing at the Imperial Palace. He was the supreme ruler of the Kravari Empire, a massive warrior with scars covering his face and arms. He had conquered more worlds than any warlord before him. There are some small issues with supply chains, his advisor told him. Nothing serious. We are correcting them. Gracchus waved his hand. Small issues are not my concern. What about the humans? They have done nothing, my warlord. No counterattack? No fleet movements, nothing. Gracchus smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Cowards. I told you they would not fight. They are weak. He was satisfied. Everything was going well. The Empire was strong. He did not know that his own intelligence service had been compromised 3 years ago. He did not know that the advisor standing next to him was receiving money from human accounts. He did not know that every word spoken in this room was being recorded and sent to Director Choi Yoon-ji, far away. At the Galactic Council, the other species watched and waited. They expected a human response. A fleet battle, a desperate defense, something, but there was nothing. Just silence. Counselor Vreth gave a speech mocking the humans. He called them cowards who had abandoned their own people. He said this proved that humans were not worthy of respect. The council laughed again, but old Torek the historian did not laugh. He sat in his chair and watched the empty space where Ambassador Park Do-yun used to sit. The human delegation had not returned to the council since that first day. Torek went back to the archives that night. He searched again for information about the Mordrith. He found one old document he had missed before, a personal diary from a trader who had visited Mordrith. Space just before the end. The entry was short. Something is wrong here. Small things keep breaking. People are angry and confused. They blame each other. They do not see the pattern. I am leaving before it gets worse. That was the last entry. The trader never wrote again. Torek closed the document. His hands were shaking. He thought about the Krivari, so proud and confident. He thought about those small error satellites glitching, shipments delayed, messages lost. He wanted to warn them. He wanted to tell someone what was happening, but who would believe him? The Krivari were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Humans were just traders. Just merchants. Just the species that had erased the Mordrith from existence without anyone knowing how. Torek looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krivari were celebrating their victory over Nubisan. They thought they were winning. They had no idea they were already losing. They had no idea that the small errors were not accidents. They had no idea that their empire was starting to crack. And by the time they understood, it would be far too late. 2 weeks after the fall of Nubisan, the Krivari Empire began to tear itself apart. It started with rumors, whispers in military bases, secrets shared in dark corners. People started saying that General Vornik was planning to overthrow Warlord Gracchus. They said he had been meeting with other officers in secret. They said he wanted the throne for himself. The rumors were lies. They had been created by Lieutenant Beek Sojin and her team of cyber warfare specialists aboard the HSS Resolve. They had spent months studying Krivari social networks, understanding who trusted whom, who hated whom, who was jealous of whom. Then they had planted false evidence in exactly the right places, messages that looked real, financial records that showed secret payments, communications that seemed to prove betrayal. General Vornak was loyal to Warlord Gracchus. He had served the Empire for 50 years, but the evidence was perfect. Too perfect to question. Gracchus ordered Vornak arrested. When Vornak resisted, saying he was innocent, Gracchus had him executed in public. Vornak's last words were that he had been betrayed, that someone was manipulating the Empire from within. No one listened. After Vornak died, his supporters were angry. They did not believe he was a traitor. They started to distrust Gracchus. Some of them began talking about rebellion. Lieutenant Beek Sojin watched the chaos unfold on her screens. She was young, only 32, but she was one of the best information warfare specialists humanity had ever produced. She sat in a dark room surrounded by computers, her fingers moving across keyboards, her eyes scanning data streams. General Vornak's execution has caused significant unrest in the Third Fleet, she reported to Admiral Yoon Heron. His former officers are refusing orders. 3 ships have gone silent. Heron nodded from the command center of the Resolve. Good, now target Governor Krelak in the Outer Territories. He has been loyal to Gracchus for years. Turn them against each other. Yes, Admiral. Sujin went back to work. She pulled up files on Governor Krelak, his communications, his finances, his relationships, his fears. Within hours, she had created a perfect web of false evidence, showing that Krelak was stealing military supplies and selling them to enemies of the Empire. The evidence arrived on Gracchus's desk the next morning. Krelak was arrested. But unlike Vornak, Krelak had a private army. When Gracchus's soldiers came for him, Krelak fought back. 3 Krivari worlds erupted in civil war, and still, no one understood what was happening. On Krivari Prime, Warlord Gracchus sat in his throne room and raged. Traitors everywhere, rebellion in the outer systems, supply lines collapsing, the economy failing. How is this possible? He roared at his advisors. We are the greatest empire in the galaxy. We do not fall apart like this. His chief of intelligence, a thin Kravari named Scareth, stepped forward carefully. My warlord, I believe we are under attack. Gracchus turned his burning eyes on Scareth. Attack? There are no enemy fleets. There are no battles. That is exactly my point, Scareth said quietly. The humans. They have not responded to our conquest of New Bizone. They have done nothing. That is not normal. Gracchus stared at him. You think the humans are doing this? I think we should consider the possibility. These problems, the rumors, the false evidence, the supply failures, they are too perfect. Too coordinated. Someone is manipulating us. Gracchus was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed. Humans? They are merchants, traders. They do not know how to fight. Scareth lowered his head. Yes, my warlord. But Scareth was not stupid. He began his own investigation. He traced the false evidence against Vornik and Krelak. He analyzed the supply chain failures. He looked for patterns, he found them. Someone has been inside our systems for years, he told Gracchus 2 days later. Possibly decades. They know everything about us. Our military codes, our financial systems, our communication networks. They have agents everywhere. Gracchus finally began to understand. The humans. Yes, my warlord. It must be. Gracchus slammed his fist on his throne. Then we will find these agents and kill them. We will send our fleets to Earth and burn it. My warlord, I do not think that is wise. Gracchus glared at him. Why not? Scareth chose his words carefully. Because if we send our fleets away, we will lose control of the rebellions here. The Empire will collapse completely. And if the humans can do this to us from the inside, what can they do to a fleet traveling through space? They could turn our own ships against each other. They could make us destroy ourselves. Gracchus was silent. For the first time in his life, he felt something close to fear. Then what do we do? He asked quietly. Scareth had no answer across the galaxy. At the Galactic Council, the other species were finally beginning to notice that something was wrong. Reports came in about civil war in Kravari space, about economic collapse, about 3 governors declaring independence. Councillor Vreth stood before the council, confused. What is happening to the Kravari? They were the strongest empire in the galaxy. No one could answer. Ambassador Park Do-yun was not at the council. He had not returned since his warning. The human section remained empty. Old Torek, the historian, stood up slowly. Everyone looked at him. He rarely spoke. I have been studying the archives, he said. His voice was thin and tired. I found records of another species that challenged humanity long ago. The Mordreth. They were powerful, like the Kravari. They threatened human worlds. The council listened. The Mordreth no longer exist, Torek continued. There are no records of great battles. No stories of heroic last stands. They simply disappeared. Their worlds went silent. Their ships stopped moving. And then they were gone as if they had never existed. The chamber was quiet. I believe we are watching the same thing happen to the Kravari, Torek said. The humans are not fighting a war. They are erasing an empire. And they are doing it without firing a single shot. Councillor Vreth shook his head. That is impossible. You cannot destroy an empire with tricks and lies. Torek looked at him sadly. Tell that to the Mordreth. Aboard the HSS Resolve, Admiral Yoon Heron received a report from Lieutenant Beek Sojin. The Kravari Empire was fracturing faster than expected. 5 governors had now declared independence. 2 fleets had engaged in battle with each other due to falsified orders. The economy had lost 40% of its value. They are destroying themselves, Sujin said. Just as predicted. Heron nodded. Continue operations. Do not slow down. Sujin hesitated. Admiral, permission to speak freely? Granted. Are we doing the right thing? These are not soldiers we are killing. The supply chain failures, people are going hungry. Children are suffering. We are not just destroying their military. We are destroying their entire civilization. Harren was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "The Kravari were going to kill 4 million people on New Bizon. They have killed millions more on other worlds. They were warned. They were given a choice." "I know," Sujin said. "But still ... You are right to question," Harren said gently. "Never stop questioning. But also never forget why we are doing this. We are not cruel. We are not evil. We simply do not accept threats to our people. And we do not leave enemies behind who will come back for revenge." Sujin nodded slowly. "I understand. Good. Now target the military command structure. It is time to take away their ability to coordinate. Once they cannot talk to each other, it will be over." Sujin returned to her screens. Her fingers moved across the keyboard. Across Kravari space, military communication networks began to fail. Commanders lost contact with their ships. Orders were lost. Confusion spread. The Empire was falling, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. 1 month after the fall of New Bizon, Warlord Graka stood in his throne room and faced the truth. His empire was dying. Every day brought worse news. 3 more worlds had gone dark. No communications, no ships, nothing. The military was shattered. Generals fought each other instead of the enemy. The economy had collapsed completely. Food was running out in major cities. And still, there were no human ships. No human soldiers. No human attacks that he could see and fight against. Grakas had sent messages to Earth asking for peace talks. The messages never arrived. He had sent ships to find human fleets and force a battle. The ships got lost in space when their navigation systems failed. He had ordered his intelligence service to find the human agents in Kravari space. The intelligence service fell apart when its own members started, accusing each other of being spies. Everything he tried failed. Every move he made was already predicted and countered. Scareth, his intelligence chief, came to him with the worst news yet. "My warlord, I have confirmed it. There are human agents in every major system. Every military base. Every government office. They have been here for decades. Some of them have Kravari families, children. They are part of our society." Graka stared at him. "How many?" "Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. We cannot know for sure." "Then arrest them all. Kill anyone who might be a human agent." Scareth shook his head. "If we do that, we will destroy ourselves. We would be killing our own people based on suspicion. The Empire would collapse even faster. That might be exactly what they want us to do." Graka sat down heavily on his throne. He was the greatest warrior the Kravari had ever known. He had conquered more worlds than any warlord in history. And he was being defeated by an enemy he could not see, could not find, could not fight. "What do they want?" he asked quietly. "What do the humans want?" "I do not know, my warlord. They have made no demands. They have asked for nothing. They are simply taking us apart." On Kravari Prime, Commander Kang Minho received the signal to begin. Phase 2. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. He gathered his team in a basement, beneath a warehouse in the capital city. 20 human agents, all of them trained for this mission. They wore Kravari clothes and spoke perfect Kravari. Some of them had lived on this planet for 15 years. Phase 2 is active, Minho told them. We are targeting infrastructure, power grids, water systems, transportation networks. We are not trying to kill people. We are trying to make their civilization stop working. One of his agents, a young woman named Go Yuna, raised her hand. "Commander, what about the hospitals? If we take down the power grid, people will die." Minho was quiet for a moment. "We will not target hospitals directly. But we cannot save everyone. People will die. That is the nature of what we are doing." The room was silent. They all knew what they had signed up for. They all understood the cost. But knowing and doing were different things. "Remember why we are here," Minho said. "The Kravari have killed millions of innocent people. They were going to kill 4 million more on New Bizun. They will not stop unless we make them stop. This is not cruelty. This is survival. His team nodded. They understood. That night, the power grid in the capital city of Kravari Prime failed. It was not a total blackout, that would be too obvious. Instead, the power flickered on and off, unpredictable and random. Some areas had power, some did not. It changed every hour. The Kravari tried to fix it. But every time they repaired one problem, another appeared. The systems had been corrupted years ago. Human code was buried so deep in their infrastructure that it was impossible to remove without rebuilding everything from scratch. Water treatment plants began to fail. Food storage facilities lost refrigeration. Transportation systems sent vehicles to wrong locations. And on space stations throughout Kravari space, atmospheric processors began to malfunction. Not completely, that would kill everyone immediately. Instead, oxygen levels dropped slowly. People became tired, confused, sick. The Kravari were suffocating, slowly, quietly. The Galactic Council. An emergency session was called. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to watch the death of an empire in real time. Ambassador Park Do-yun came back for the first time in weeks. He walked to the central platform and stood there calmly while hundreds of aliens stared at him. Counselor Vreth stood up. His voice was shaking. "What are you doing to them? What have you done?" Park Do-yun looked at him. "We warned them. We gave them 7 days. They chose this. You are committing genocide." "No," Do-yun said quietly. "We are defending ourselves." Vreth was shaking with anger. "This is not defense. There are no battles. No soldiers fighting. You are murdering an entire civilization." Do-yun nodded slowly. "Yes, that is exactly what we are doing." The chamber was silent. The calmness in the human's voice was more frightening than any threat. "You asked us why humans do not fight wars," Do-yun continued. "This is why. War is wasteful. War is slow. War leaves survivors who want revenge, enemies who rebuild and come back stronger. We learned this lesson long ago after many painful wars among ourselves." He paused and looked around the chamber at all the frightened faces. "When humanity goes to war now, we do not fight. We do not conquer. We do not occupy. We simply remove the threat, completely, permanently, so that it can never threaten us again." Old Torek the historian spoke up. "Like the Mordreth." Do-yun looked at him. "Yes, like the Mordreth. What happened to them?" Torek asked. "How did they die?" Do-yun was quiet for a moment. "They did not die." "Not in the way you mean." "We did not kill them with weapons. We took away their ability to function as a society. Their technology, their organization, their identity. They did not end in fire. They ended in silence. They scattered. They forgot who they were. And eventually they were simply ... Torek felt cold. "And that is what you are doing to the Kravari." "Yes." Counselor Vreth stepped forward. "We will not allow this. The council will intervene." Do-yun turned to face him. "Counselor, when the Kravari were conquering worlds and killing millions, the council did nothing. When they threatened our colony, the council laughed at us. You had your chance to stop this through diplomacy. You chose to do nothing." He took a step closer to Vreth. "And now you will continue to do nothing. Because you are afraid. You are afraid that if you try to stop us, you will be next." Vreth opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Do-yun turned back to address the entire council. "We do not want war with anyone. We do not want to conquer or control. We want only to live in peace. But if anyone threatens our people, if anyone tries to harm us, they will be removed, completely, without mercy, without exception." He looked around the chamber one final time. "I hope this will be the last time we have to demonstrate this. I hope everyone here understands now what it means to threaten humanity. Because if we have to do this again, it will be just as thorough. And just as permanent." He walked off the platform and left the chamber, behind him. 300 species sat in horrified silence. The Kravari Empire had 1 week left to exist. And everyone in the galaxy knew there was nothing anyone could do to save it. 3 months later, the Kravari Empire was gone, not conquered, not occupied, not defeated in any way the galaxy understood. It was simply erased, as if it had never existed. Their worlds were silent. Power grids were dead. Cities stood empty. Ships floated in space without energy or direction. The great military that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was scattered and broken, its soldiers fighting among themselves or wandering lost without orders to follow. The Kravari people survived, but just barely. Some fled to other worlds as refugees. Some stayed on their planets, struggling to find food and water without functioning systems. Some simply disappeared, lost in the chaos, never to be found. Director Choi Yoon-ji completed her final report on Operation Silent Dawn. Total cost: 0 human casualties. 0 human ships lost. 0 battles fought. Total result: 1 empire of 47 worlds completely neutralized. All military capability destroyed. All government structures dissolved. All cultural records corrupted or deleted. She sent the report to Admiral Yoon Heron aboard the Resolve. Heron read it in silence. Then she authorized Phase 3. Phase 3 was reconstruction. Human ships arrived in former Kravari space. Not warships, cargo vessels, and medical ships. They brought food, water, power generators, medical supplies. They helped refugees. They restored basic services. They built shelters. Commander Kang Min-ho and his team emerged from hiding and joined the reconstruction efforts. They worked side by side with the same Kravari they had been destroying weeks before. They helped families find food. They repaired water systems. They treated the sick. Some of his team found it strange. They had torn this civilization apart, and now they were putting it back together. Agent Go Yuna asked him about it one night as they distributed food in a refugee camp. Why are we doing this? We destroyed them. Why are we helping them now? Minho looked at the Kravari families around them, parents holding children, old people sitting in silence, young warriors with empty eyes. They were not enemies now. They were just people who had lost everything. Because we are not monsters, he said. We do what is necessary to protect our people, but we do not enjoy suffering. We do not want revenge. We want the violence to end. Yuna nodded slowly. And this shows the galaxy that we can destroy completely and rebuild completely. Yes, both are warnings. At the Galactic Council, everything had changed. When Ambassador Park Do-yeon entered the chamber now, every species stood in respect. When he spoke, the room was silent. When he made requests, they were granted immediately. Species that had ignored humanity for centuries suddenly wanted treaties. Trade agreements? Non-aggression pacts. Cultural exchanges. They sent gifts. They offered technology. They competed to be on good terms with the humans. Do-yeon accepted some of these offers and politely declined others. He was always calm, always polite, always friendly. But everyone could see the steel underneath. Counselor Vreth came to him privately one day. The Torani representative looked tired and afraid. He had not slept well since watching the Kravari fall. Ambassador, he said carefully, I must ask you something. What do humans want? Do-yeon raised an eyebrow. Want? Yes, what do you want from the galaxy? Conquest? Control? Tribute? Do-yeon shook his head. We want nothing, Counselor. We are not conquerors. We do not want to rule other species. We do not want their worlds or their resources. Then what? Peace, trade, cooperation. We want to explore the stars and build things and live our lives. We are not a threat to anyone who is not a threat to us. Vreth leaned forward. And if someone is a threat to you? Do-yeon looked at him for a long moment. Then they cease to exist. As you have seen. Vreth felt cold. How do we avoid that? How do we make sure we never become your enemy? Do-yeon smiled slightly. It was not a cruel smile, it was almost kind. Counselor, it is very simple. Do not threaten us. Do not harm our people. Do not give us a reason to see you as an enemy. If you do these things, you have nothing to fear from humanity. We will be your friends, your partners, your allies." He paused. "But if you threaten us, if you harm us, if you make us believe that you are a danger to our survival, then nothing will save you. No fleet, no fortress, no alliance. We will take you apart piece by piece until there is nothing left." Vreth nodded slowly. He understood now. Humans were not aggressive. They were not evil. They were not cruel. They were simply absolute. Back on Earth, the public knew only that a threat had been neutralized. There were no victory parades, no celebrations, no heroes returning home to cheering crowds. Operation Silent Dawn was classified at the highest level. Only a few hundred people knew the full truth of what had been done. Admiral Yoon Heron returned to Earth and received no medals. She went back to her office and began preparing for future operations ones she hoped would never be necessary. Lieutenant Baek Sujin transferred to a teaching position, training the next generation of information warfare specialists. She never talked about what she had done to the Krivari. Sometimes, late at night, she wondered if she should feel guilty. She had destroyed a civilization from behind a computer screen. Millions of people had suffered because of her work. But then she remembered New Bizan, 4 million people saved. Children who would grow up because the Krivari never reached them. Families that would stay together. Lives that would be lived. That was why she had done it. That was why all of them had done it. Not for glory. Not for conquest. Not for revenge, for survival. Ambassador Park Do-yeon stayed on at the Galactic Council. He became the most respected voice in the chamber and the most feared. Other species came to him for advice. They asked him to mediate disputes. They trusted him to be fair and reasonable. And they were always careful not to offend him. Old Torek, the historian, spent the rest of his life studying what had happened to the Krivari. He interviewed refugees. He analyzed records. He tried to piece together exactly how humanity had done it, how they had turned an empire against itself without anyone noticing until it was too late. He never fully understood. The humans were too careful. They erased their tracks too well. But he wrote down everything he learned, hoping that future generations would read it and understand what humanity was capable of. His book was called The Silence Before the End. It became the most important text in the galaxy about human warfare, but Torek knew it was incomplete. The full truth would never be known. The humans would make sure of that. In her quarters aboard the Resolve, Admiral Yoon Heron stood at a window and looked out at the stars. The ship was returning to Earth after months in former Krivari space. The mission was complete. Humanity was safe. The galaxy was at peace. She thought about the Krivari. She thought about the millions who had suffered. She thought about Warlord Gracchus, who had died in his throne room when his own guards turned on him, guards who had been paid by human agents. She felt no joy, no satisfaction, only a kind of tired emptiness. Was it worth it? She asked herself quietly. She did not know. She would probably never know. But she knew that she would do it again if she had to. That was her job? That was humanity's way. Protect our people. Remove all threats. Leave nothing behind. Somewhere out there, other species were telling their children about the humans. The quiet ones. The polite ones. The ones who smiled and traded and built beautiful things. The ones who did not fight wars. The ones who simply made you disappear. Heron turned away from the window and went back to work. The galaxy was at peace. For now.